Okay. Now I wanted to touch on the theme again. I was listening to the one song, "The Call," and then in one of the lines it say, "We must rebuild a new Black nation." So I
Mhm.
kind of wanted to touch on that. How do y'all formulate the themes, and also the role that you play in the community in terms of rebuilding that new Black nation? If you could talk a little bit more about food cooperatives or the the farm that you have.
Mhm. So the lyrics to that song were written by my brother Ayodele Bakari, and Ayodele is the leader of the vocal section, and he and I have been playing music together for more than 20 years. I can't remember exactly, but because we were both activists in the Black nationalist Pan Africanist community in Detroit, we were coming in contact with each other constantly. He knew I played guitar, I knew he sang, so we started collaborating. And sometimes we just do shows, community stuff, Kwanzaa, African Liberation Day, lectures. A lot of times they call us and ask us. And so sometimes it'd be just the two of us, me on acoustic guitar, him on vocals. Sometimes we'd add a brother Kafense Chike on congas and percussion, and we call that band Africa ISOM, in service of Ma'at. And so Ayodele led that band, so he was the leader of that. So he and I had played together for the last 20 years, even long before Mollywop started. So we wrote that song, "The Call." He and I wrote that again before Mollywop even was thought of. And we used to perform that with this other band, Africa Esam. But the way the song came about, he came over my house one day and I was playing the chords to the song. And he just like started vibing, and then, came back with the whole lyrics, right? So he wrote the lyrics to the song. I wrote the chord changes, except for the bridge. He wrote the chord changes on the bridge. Um, so, again, Ayodele comes out of the Black nationalist movement. He's been a conscious citizen of the Republic of New Africa for, 40 years or so. And so, both he and I see our situation as a people, as a nation, within a nation, and that, the way that we should think about liberating our people is national liberation, as well as, thinking about, really thinking about the Black nation in a more expanded way, even in a more Pan-African way, because the national boundaries that we think about, even though they had meaning, they were imposed by colonists. And so, it's hard to think about just the liberation of Ghana, because Ghana is in a sense a colonial creation. I mean, you got the ancient Ghana, but that doesn't align perfectly with the contemporary state of Ghana. Senegal was created by colonists easterly, Senegal as we know it now. And so the same thing, the fact that we got Black people in the United States calling ourselves African American, you got Black people in Jamaica calling themselves Jamaicans, it's a result of colonization and enslavement. And so even thinking about us as a nation here, but also thinking about that nation in a more expanded way, as the path forward to liberation. So that's what he was referring to. That that we have the work ahead of doing nation building, which many of us have been doing for a while. And so you asked me about the work I've been involved in, and probably that term nation building is a good maybe rubric to cover the types of things I've been doing for all of my adult life. For 22 years, I ran an African-centered school in Detroit called Ensordom Institute, and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of students, excuse me, from Detroit went to the school over the years, and many of them are doing wonderful things in the community, and some of them are activists. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Um, and then at the school we started doing pretty serious gardening in 1999, and we developed a food security curriculum for the students, because we thought it was important not only that students know about African history and know about the various philosophies and ideologies that our leaders have espoused as a way of moving us towards liberation, but that students be whole, healthy African human beings. And so we had a heavy emphasis in the school on health and diet. Certain things were not allowed in the school. And so when people enrolled in the school, we had a parent orientation where we would go through these things. For example, no gum or candy allowed in the school. If we see gum or candy, we're going to take it from the child. We're not going to return it to the parent. We're going to throw it in the trash. Soda pop is not allowed in the school. When people had birthday parties, for a student, they want to do it in their classroom, they had to have cakes that were made without the use of white flour, without white bleach sugar. You had to have a vegan option for students who might have been vegan and things like that. So health was a part of the culture of the school, but also we wanted students to gain lessons about self-determination. That one of the ways we can begin to take control of our lives and our communities is by growing at least some of the food that we consume. It breaks to some degree the stranglehold that the white supremacist capitalist system has on us, to a small degree, when we're able to produce some of the food that we consume. So we wanted to teach the students that lesson, but also the deeper lesson on the more, maybe you could say, the metaphysical level, was we wanted to give students an experience where they could realize their connection with the rest of creation. And so, we would often talk about concepts like ma'at within the school, but, going beyond just intellectualizing these concepts, we want to give the students experiences where they began to understand the relationship between the different parts of nature. And so by having them do gardening, they were beginning to realize the relationship between human beings and plants, between insects and the plants, between the weather and the plants, between the weather and the insects, and how all those things kind of are connected together. Seasons, where the sun is at different times, it tunes you in more to the natural world that we live in. And the reality is that most people now spend most of their time inside of buildings. And so we're somewhat disconnected from, I would call it, the universal flow. And so it is my view, and it was the view of the school, that if we are going to come up with solutions that will lead African people to liberation, then they have to be solutions that arise out of us being whole, not us being fractured, colonial-minded, clones of our oppressors. That we not only have to know intellectually, our culture and history, but we also have to spiritually disconnect, from the kind of artificial oppressive system, and connect with this universal flow, with the creator, with our ancestors, with the cycles of the universe and all those kind of things. So we started doing gardening at the school for those reasons. And then that morphed. By 2006, we needed a larger container for the work. And so we created the Detroit Black Community Food Security Network. And so we've been doing various types of work since that time. As I mentioned, the farm, the youth program, we do public lectures, and we're building this new building that will house the Detroit People's Food Co-op.
Oh man, wow, that's truly amazing, man. That sounds life-changing, honestly. Even if some adults could go through a program like that, I could use a program like that, man, for sure, for sure.
What's interesting is, while the students were at the school, most of them didn't appreciate it. In fact, sometimes we'd have students in rebellion, like in social studies, for example, because we're teaching them all this African history and African American history, and they were saying, we're not gonna be ready when we get to high school. We're not gonna be ready for the curriculum that they're gonna have there. And they were, kind of protesting. In fact, I think some students kind of organized a semi-protest in the school. But then as they left the school and they got into these Eurocentric institutions, then they began to realize the value of what they had learned. And so many of them now have come back and, you know, have testified as to how helpful that was, that grounding that they had as young people in their own history and culture, and the confidence that they had. Even, you know, when you walk into a school and you walk into the office and I'm the principal, people look at me and be like, what? He's the principal? It's like, yeah, I'm the principal. And then they see other, you know, teachers in the school, African clothes and locks and, you know, heads wrapped. And, you know, one classroom, you might listen and they playing John Coltrane, and up on the wall, you got, you know, Fannie Lou Hamer. You know, it's like just being in that kind of environment that says it's okay to be your natural Black self. You know, it helps you to free up. You know, like there were teachers who started at the school with perms, right? And then after 6 months, you know, because the norm in the school, everybody around you wearing their hair natural, after 6 months or so, a lot of the times teachers with the perms, they come in, their hair is natural because the environment gave them permission to do that. And so it was what we call a liberated zone. And so that kind of liberation of your mind, even once you leave out of that, it's like, you know, once you leave out of that, it's, you know, you have a high bar. So you now have to compare everything else to that. So it was a very valuable experience for everybody involved.
Wow, man. Like I said, like I told the viewers before we started, man, you got that knowledge and you sharing it and them experiences, man. That sounds just phenomenal. Like you say, it's okay to be your natural